She was dancing in the living room and with her friend. I didn't even know who her friend was. It could have been an imposter, Cody Spencer. Oh man.
Calm down.
My name is Nicole and I'm a performer. I've been performing since I was a kid. From dance to music to theater, I've always loved the spotlight.
Master Control, I didn't think you were supposed to come out on this mission with me.
For the past 2 years, I've been really involved in improvisational theater, which is theater that is made up on the spot as opposed to scripted. What I like most about improv is the opportunity to test out a whole bunch of different characters in such a short period of time. My favorite characters to play are the really weird, complex, physically based characters. But when I actually start to think about the characters I play most often, I realize I tend toward playing stereotypical female characters.
One more thing. If I don't make it out alive, I love you.
If I identify as anything, it's definitely not as these stereotypical female characters. So what gives? Why do I keep on playing these types of roles? Does it say something about me as a person? The more I think about these questions, the more I start to wonder, why do we even try on different identities at all? What motivates us to want to perform as someone else, or experiment with something like LARPing, cosplay, or just dressing up for Halloween? Is this something humans do naturally? Is it something we're missing in our society, in our own lives, that makes us want to try on the lives of someone else? What do our character choices say about us? And most importantly, does anyone else think about this shit?
I'm the kind of person who tries to be honest but gets really impatient or frustrated with people if they just don't take honest advice or opinions well.
I think I'm my authentic self when I'm not thinking about myself.
I like when people look at me. I like when I'm heard without being interrupted.
Every time Law and Order SVU comes on, I have to say the exact same thing they're saying, verbatim, and go boom boom.
I love goofing around and making people laugh.
I have, chronically been kind of low self-esteem when I was doing things. I was a nerd.
I think I'm a smart person.
Yeah, I don't think I'm unique at all, actually.
My authentic self is just someone who's nice.
I like big statement costumes. I like getting to be a little bit wild on Halloween.
I started my quest for answers by doing what any good researcher, documentarian, or investigative reporter does. I interviewed a bunch of other people. Surprisingly, most of the people I spoke with hadn't really thought about why we perform different identities, at least not until I came into their lives. But they did know why they started performing in the first place.
Lock your doors and seal the well, Marilla. If you keep that child under your roof even for a single night, it'll be a risky thing.
There was an ad in the local paper. They were looking for people to audition for this play at the theater, the local theater, Smith Falls. And I thought I would just audition. It was on my bucket list just to break out of my shyness and audition. But little did I know that when I did audition, I actually got a role. And it's kind of gotten so much larger since then.
I was brought up in a small, beautiful country in the Middle East called Oman. And I think you guys should all visit Oman if you guys are into small, beautiful countries that give zero shits about basic human rights.
I just graduated from university and I was really depressed at that point, and I had started watching a lot of comedy just before I graduated from university. And then I watched a lot of comedy and I thought, hey, this is something that I could try and see if I could be any good at it. Like all the people I'm doing seem to be fairly amateurish and they are at least having fun doing it.
I think this had always been something that I'd wanted to do since I was a kid, actually. I would just imitate people, or I would mimic people. Someone I knew, television actors, movie actors, I would mimic them, and my parents actually noted that out, and they would be like, you would actually make a good actor.
I initially started into it because I was newly transitioned and I was very nervous about interacting with other people. And I thought, what is the scariest thing I can do that forces me to interact with other people so I can get over this? And I said, okay, improv and performing, that will give me confidence. And it totally worked.
When you turn 50, the Ontario government sends you all kinds of lovely things in the mail. And the first thing they sent me was a note saying you need to be tested for colon cancer. And the way this works, you get a little kit. It's a card with, I can tell who's over 50 here.
My very, very first cosplay was Duo Maxwell from Gundam Wing. It was the crappiest cosplay I've ever made. It was just a bunch of silliness and even though that costume, like looking back now, I'm like, it sucked. It was still so much fun that people saw those characters in us, like even, the bad craftsmanship and whatever that I think of, they were like, no, they're like those characters. Like, that was the most fun thing that made me want to keep doing it.
And this sword has seen me through 6 months worth of combat. One of my friends goes to a lot of conventions, and I haven't been to any of these like local anime conventions or local gaming conventions, and he showed up to one of them and there was an advertising booth. And he goes, you'd love this, you gotta come to this. I ended up getting talked into going to my first game. It was the May long weekend. And I'm sitting in a cabin, it's 1 a.m. I can't sleep because there's bugs in my sleeping bag. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I doing this to myself? I'm never doing this again. And by the Monday morning, I'm like, when is the next event? I can't wait to do this again.
I had a lot of energy as a kid and wasn't great at focusing that. So performing really helped, and part of that was dressing up.
For me, it was initially to escape, and really for affirmation I existed, because I was there on the stage and everybody knew it. I really needed that as a kid and as a young man, just to tell me I was worth something.
For me, I think performing was in my blood. My grandmother on my father's side was a dancer, and my grandfather on my mother's side was a singer and actor, and my mother's mother is an artist, and both my parents were in the film industry when I was growing up. I've been surrounded by creativity and imagination my whole life, and performing for me was making that imagination real, even if for a brief moment in time. But why do we do it? From overcoming shyness and building self-esteem to simply having fun, the reasons we start performing are multiple. But why do we continue? What do we get out of trying on all these different personalities?
Okay, so now we can go left or we can go right.
Hello, weirdos. Danny once told me I always played a jerk, kind of like a jock, kind of jerk. And that's like very far away from me. Like, even though I was doing a lot of sports, I was never really competent in sport. I was never like the best hockey player in my school and those sort of things. I was the one who was barely making the sports teams. And it was just by passion more than by any kind of talent. Maybe it's a subconscious want.
Getting to be another person for at least a day, I think, is the big thing. Like, when I do Halloween, it was never just like blood and guts kind of Halloween. It was always an opportunity to be someone else, which is the same thing with cosplay and with LARPing. And I'm finding recently with LARPing that my character is like all those parts of me that I have to try to like put away every day in order to like not offend people.
Acting definitely gives you the reason and excuse to portray yourself as somebody else while others look at you, pin drop silence, and give you the space and time and let you discover yourself.
You know, Virginia, for a beauty queen, you sure are cut up in some ugly business here. You know, whenever you're in your own life and stuff, there's limitations there, you know, there's some things that you can't do. And playing a different role, sometimes you get to do those things that you think about doing, but you can't really.
Gasoline.
They're really rich life experiences, and that's what I love. It just feels like I just really feel really alive when I'm doing this stuff, and that's, you know, it's a high that you can't replicate, and I just love it.
I'm a mom at home. I'm a wife at home. I'm a fur baby parent at home. But when I'm acting, especially if it's an excitingly different role to what you are in real life, it is so far removed from what I am at home. It allows me to play.
There's a joke that I do about how disappointing my father by trying to be a comedian and not finding a job.
One of the things that I recently started doing is I started taking pictures of the audience members that come to the shows that I perform at. And what I do with these pictures is I collect them and then I put them in a file. And at the end of the month, I take that file and email it to my dad, just to constantly keep reminding him about the $50,000 he wasted on my education.
I actually started looking for a job, so then I adopted a stage name, Joke Salesman, who is a character now I play on stage who is basically didn't do what I did.
Part of it for me is you really do have to just be alive and awake in the moment. That's what I get. It's not about hiding or showing, it's just, who am I now?
Through trying on different identities, we also get to learn about ourselves and others. Sometimes we even change as a result of the different experiences we've had.
Well, a lot of people, they define themselves by what they're not. A lot of times be like, well, I'm not this. I don't know what I am, but I know I'm not this. And I think a lot of times just through my acting and seeing my characters, it's sort of where I usually start. I'm like, well, I'm not this person, so I'm like, okay, where am I coming from here?
So I did 2 years of vagina monologues. The first year was me being a transgender person. My monologue put me in the shoe of someone who does not identify with their gender. It led me to think about how people feel when they don't really think that they fit in the identity they've been allotted.
You think, cosplay, you think LARPing, you think that particular nerdy community. I was playing with people who were teachers, economists, medical professionals, and hearing their stories, a lot of them said this was really helpful for them because part of their being able to deal with mental health issues, be it through the therapeutic action of spending time with their friends or being able to experiment or gain confidence, was through there.
You want to put yourself out there in a way that most people don't get to see, and I think my Shakespeare birthday party was a good element of that for me, like inviting everybody into a world that I have as part of me that people don't get to see very often. But then I also really like the opportunity to put myself in somebody else's shoes.
Hearing about how people's experiments with different identities has helped them learn about themselves and about those around them, I couldn't help but think, then why aren't we all just trying on different identities all the time? I mean, of course we wear different masks in every part of our lives, but outside of performance-type venues or days like Halloween, we don't have much option to experiment with personalities that are wildly different from our own. But if experimenting in this way is so valuable, why can't we do it in real life?
Adults don't play very much, it's almost like we've been told you're not supposed to play.
You're supposed to be this single individual and not experiment with that identity.
I think we all know that in real life, we should think of other people before we react a certain way.
Part of working together, building civilization, is I sacrifice some freedoms or I sacrifice something to gain civilization. So the eccentricities in society, it doesn't mesh because we're expected to kind of fall in line.
I really honestly think that and wish that adults and people in society actually had more of that comfortable confidence to be creative. But that is society, I guess.
As some of the people I spoke to reminded me, real life isn't the only place we're restricted in experimenting with identities. There can still be boundaries in performance as well.
So at first I had no any filters on what I would do in improv.
Hello, girls.
Now doing improv in the Ottawa community, I saw there was places I didn't think they were no-goes, but I realized maybe not. I realized myself there were no-goes, but maybe some people wouldn't like me to go there, and I just to avoid any trouble, I try to be more self-conscious.
You don't have freedom on somebody else's show. Like in my show, I don't want people to come up and fucking talk about rape or be racist to the audience because, hey, it's my show, you can't be doing that, and that's not something I'm comfortable with.
I've noticed even in cosplay, people don't like it when other people dress up as even a character of a different ethnicity, which is a little a little on the line for me. Personally, I think if you are a character, that's fine. If you're a character with a name, that's usually fine. But if you're just some generic looking Pacific Islander person, then you're not being another person, you're being some other ethnicity that you don't know anything about, or you don't know anything about their struggles.
Dressing up as a culture for Halloween, in my opinion, is not appropriate. And it's a different thing if you're dressing up as a historical figure, but it's about being able to listen to each other. And if I do something that offends you and you tell me that that's offensive, I now have the choice whether to be respectful of that or to move on with my life in a different direction. And I hope that most people can listen to that and choose to be respectful of people around them and the feelings that they have.
I think there should be wide latitude for people to express themselves. But at the same time, if somebody does cross the line and does something overtly racist or sexist or homophobic or hateful or whatever, they should expect a lot of blowback. And they shouldn't use freedom of expression as a get out of jail free card to say, no, you can't criticize me because I can say what I want. So it works both ways. With freedom comes responsibility. And if you're going to take the freedom to say certain things, you have to own them afterwards and not complain.
This summer, I went to downtown Ottawa to see a street performance by the theatre company La Machine. The show was called The Spirit of the Dragon Horse with Stolen Wings. Performed over several days, the show told the story of Long Ma, a half-horse, half-dragon creature who goes on a quest to recover his sacred temple from the giant spider Kumo. It was a hot day when I went down to see the performance, but thousands of people lined the street with me. And as the machines passed by, we all became part of Long Ma and Kumo's story. Children and adults alike were in awe of the giant mechanical creatures. It was a magical moment where we used our imaginations to see past the machine operators and instead create a real dragon and a real giant spider before our eyes. Afterward, I cried a little at the beauty of our collective experience.
Putting yourself up on stage is such a vulnerable position. And I think that there's a bit of a misconception that it's done out of pride or grandiose. And certainly there are elements of that from time to time, as there are with dressing up as a peacock for Halloween, right? But there is also this vulnerability, this honesty that is really hard to come by elsewhere. And I think connection is the key.
Sometimes you sense the audience is leaning in because they're finding their emotional space in that, and they see you as real, and they forget that it's a stage. They forget that they have worries at home and a babysitter they have to go back to. All that stuff is gone because they're so connected to what's going on. So it's only created by all of us, all only in that moment.
I start off with my experience, but I'm hoping that experience is more relatable to other people, and that experience, then I hope that people are, if they've had a similar experience, then they start questioning whether, they critically look at their own situation and where they stand.
Being in cosplay, being in a costume is like having this huge flag or this huge sign on you saying like, I like this thing. I'm interested in this thing. Whereas every day passing somebody on the street, you have no idea what they're listening to on their headphones or what they might watch on TV when they go home or something. Being in a space that fosters things like cosplay and encourages people to come dress up in a costume is like, already going to a space that is open to accepting who you are.
When I'm LARPing, I'm with everybody else. I'm with the people I'm helping. I'm with the people I'm fighting. I'm in connectedness with other people. And so the fact that I am with somebody else, I have that human connection, I have that aspect where both of us are doing this together, there is a sense of togetherness which helps build up that idea of what I'm doing matters because I can see it mattering to somebody else here and now.
I think everyone's always looking for a community, everyone's looking for a group. Everyone's looking for a family that's not their family.
Listening to everyone I spoke with, I realized that one of the keys to this ability to connect, to create, and to learn through identities is freedom. We need the freedom to experiment, to make mistakes, and to explore areas that in regular everyday life we don't have access to. And this is likely what people find in performance-type spaces, be they on stage, in front of the camera, at a LARPing game, or on the one day a year when dressing up in a costume is socially acceptable.
I think that the joy of LARP is that most LARPers are like, okay, that's your character, cool. Whereas in real life, you're like, why don't you, why? You might question them and think they're crazy. But in game, you can do what you want, and you're perfectly free to experiment and do what you want. No one's gonna judge you because everybody else is also doing that.
When I'm filming or when I'm on stage, I'm somebody completely different. And it's freeing, it's liberating, it's awesome.
That lack of having to explain yourself, that people are open to you being that way, that's just a real acceptance. I think that's kind of what we want. We want to belong. I think that's where you truly do feel accepted.
I guess for some people who are maybe not into things like cosplay, Halloween is that one day that you're allowed to do that, especially for adults. Where you're like, you can't play dress up every single day, so Halloween is the one time that everybody is allowed to do that.
We all have the people that we put ourselves up as, you know, especially with like social media these days. And so this is just an opportunity to embrace the chaos and do something a little bit different and be a little bit free.
You have to let people take risks, and you can't have good improv if people are constantly wondering, oh, am I gonna cross a line here?
Any art form is not made to like make people think like you did, but just raise awareness of the way you think, and people make their own judgment about it. So in terms of art, I think there should be full freedom of speech.
So in the end, why do we try on different identities?
I think that taking on a character helps facilitate finding meaning or facilitate community, because in many ways you get to shed yourself or shed anything about yourself that maybe gets in the way of that meaning making.
For me as an actor, I provide a service to society. People get to come there and disappear. They need to. Life is hard, it's suffering.
What I feel for comedy is love, and I don't know how to describe that.
Another reason too why I think people like taking on different identities is because it's fun, and it insulates their real identity from the audience in case they're private.
They call it a play for a reason, like you're supposed to have fun. And at the end of the day, we're all just sitting here pretending to be things.
Acting has given me confidence. It's given me a community of friends. It makes me feel like I'm a part of something bigger than just myself. You know, even if, you know, my film doesn't make it to Hollywood or anything like that, my kids will, after I die, will be able to still see me in film.
Halloween is a reminder of that, just to kind of let go and go with the ride and have a little bit of fun and eat some candy.
To go back to my original question of why do I always play the stereotypical female roles? I think what I've realized is I do it because it's safe. But I want my performances to be so much more than that. I want to connect with audiences and move them and make them feel something. So I think from now on, when I step out on that stage, I'm going to ask myself, who do I want to be today? And I'm going to respond by jumping into a new identity with both feet.